Do you think that Carson Wentz's job as the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders is in jeopardy due to the rise of Sam Howell?
I know it's only week one of the preseason. I understand that Sam Howell's a rookie. I understand that Carson Wentz is due over $30 million this year. But truthfully, based on what I saw last year with Carson as a Colt, based on what I've heard and seen in terms of highlights and read some articles in terms of how Carson's been performing in camp, it hasn't been good. Carson's been missing targets. Carson's been overthrowing receivers. He's been throwing balls into the dirt. They say that he's a good leader in the locker room, which is what we heard in Philly, which is what we heard in Indy. It's nothing about his character, but his skill on the field, for whatever reason, has plummeted over the last couple of seasons. He's never really been able to bounce back since that whole situation arose in Philadelphia. And I think that that is going to continue throughout the season, especially if he's going to be in a similar situation, just like he was with Jalen Hurts. Granted, Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second round. That was a little bit more of fire on his heels. There was a lot of plays where Jalen Hurts was coming in terms of having wildcat, quarterback draws and other situations to where Carson was off the field. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case here in Washington, to where they're going to put two quarterbacks on the field at the same time. But Sam Howell played very well. Sam Howell has been having a good camp. Sam Howell had made a multitude of good throws in this game to where you kind of turned your head and say, he was a fifth round quarterback? Wait, what? Two rushing throws, excuse me, two rushing touchdowns. And then you had a 2-point conversion to bring Washington back into this game. I understand that he was probably playing third, fourth, if not practice squad players in terms of difficulty and skill level. But when you go out there and you lead a team when you were down, God knows how many points in the fourth quarter of a preseason game to actually play meaningful football, that shows poise. That shows veteran leadership. That shows skill. And that shows composure. Those are all things that Carson Wentz has not been able to do outside of the leadership category, because we all know that inside that locker room, people love him. That's not the problem. It's not an issue. It's on the field performances. When the game gets tough, Carson folds. When you need him the most, Carson disappears. Sam Howell didn't run from the adversity here. Sam Howell found a way to lead his team back to within 2 points of this game, and they fell short. All I'm saying is Carson needs to be aware, because Howell's got the mobility, he's got the arm strength, and he showed that he can actually put the ball in some good places. Accuracy is key. And I know that Carson went 10 of 13 for 74 yards, but all I'm saying is if Carson doesn't step it up, put a little bit more gas onto the pedal, he could very well lose this job. We all know that Taylor Heineke is a good football player. He's a good backup, but there were too many instances where he made a lot of bad decisions. So Taylor will probably remain on this team, and I'm not saying that Sam's going to jump Taylor too, but if Taylor continues to struggle, Sam will jump guaranteed to that number 2 spot if Ron Rivera wants him to.
I'm still of the mindset that Carson Wentz is going to be the day one starter, or the week
Oh,
one
yeah, yeah,
starter,
yeah.
I should say. I don't think that's really in jeopardy here, but I will say this just to kind of give Sam Howell some credit. He definitely moved some heads this past week. And granted, I don't think it's going to manifest itself in him getting the week one starting quarterback position. I don't think he's at that point yet. But I will say that Carson probably took notice on how well Sam played in that first preseason game. Granted, it's his first experience playing in the NFL. And by and large, I thought it was a success for him. It doesn't guarantee that that will continue. But if you're Carson Wentz, this tells me, look, I got to be on my A game. And I thought Carson in that first game was fine. But really, Sam was the one that impressed me the most. And, when I look at Sam Howell, granted, 5th round draft pick, I don't think a lot of people were expecting that Sam Howell would flourish this well, this early in Washington's system. But the fact that he was, relatively decent when it came to passing, 9 of 16 for 145 yards. Granted, he could probably improve the completion percentage a little bit better, but it's his first crack at the NFL, so I'll give him a little bit of slack for that. But I love the fact that he was able to utilize his legs and be able to shake defenders. And on one of them, it ended up being a touchdown. So, not only did he get 1 rushing touchdown, he got 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. So I give the kid a lot of credit for taking advantage of the situation that was in front of him and maximizing it to the fullest of his potential. And when it comes to how I see that impacting Carson Wentz, I think it finally gives Carson Wentz a decent reason to go and play at a higher level. Now there's actually some competition behind him. Because when I look at the situation that Carson Wentz was dealing with in Indy last year, he was going to be the starting quarterback. Granted, he was dealing with some early injury issues at the beginning of the season, but nobody was really expecting that Carson Wentz was going to lose his starting spot as the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts unless he fell completely off due to just ineffectiveness to be able to execute. But when it comes to Carson in the situation with Washington, I do believe that with Sam's rise, granted it's only been one preseason game, I think Carson's going to take notice of that, and he's going to use that as fuel and motivation to be able to play at a higher level for Washington. And hopefully for them, it means that Carson plays at a higher level, at a more effective level to be able to complete passes on a consistent basis, not throw errant passes like he did multiple times with the Colts last year. And the one thing that Carson can utilize very well here is that he can utilize his legs. He did it in Philly early on in his career. He was able to do it in times with the Colts last year. And if a play breaks down, Carson could be able to do that with Washington here. So overall, I'm of the mindset that Carson's still going to be the week 1 starter. I'm not saying that his job is in jeopardy yet. But if Carson slips, I imagine that Ron Rivera and the coaching staff may come to a situation where they may have to evaluate the quarterback position and they may give Sam Howell a look. Maybe they give it to Taylor Heineke. It just kind of depends on who's the hot hand at the time. But Sam definitely proved to me that he's definitely somebody to consider in this equation. And it's not just a 2-man race with Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke anymore. Sam's put himself in that discussion, but I still believe Carson's going to be the day 1 starter for Washington. That's just how I see it.